Hi there, I'm Andy Looney, and today I'm going to teach you how to play Fluxx, the card game of ever-changing rules and one of Looney Lab's most popular creations. In this game, goal cards tell you which combination of items, pictured on keeper cards, you need in order to win. But the cool thing is, both the gameplay rules and the goals can be changed at any time, keeping the game in a constant state of flux. Fluxx has been around for over 20 years, and there are many different varieties for you to play. I'm going to be demonstrating with an original Fluxx deck today, which introduced the 4 basic card types: keepers, goals, new rules, and actions. The various other versions of Fluxx all use the same core structure, but then take the game in other directions, sometimes even adding new types of cards like creepers and surprises, which I'll explain later in the video. To set up the game, place the basic rules card in the center of the table and shuffle up the deck. Deal 3 cards to each player, then establish a spot for the discard pile next to the draw pile. Play proceeds clockwise around the table. Fluxx is a game for 2 to 6 players, and new people can join at any time. Just deal them in. The player who gets the game going by drawing the first card goes first. Fluxx begins with the basic rules card, which simply states, draw 1, play 1. Players will follow these rules, adding 1 card to their hand and playing 1 card per turn until the rules change. These cards with the yellow stripe are new rule cards, and whatever they say replaces the current rule. There's no limit to how many rules can be in play at once, as long as they don't contradict each other. Now, as soon as I play this card, the rules become draw 2, play 1. But since all rule changes take effect immediately, and I've only drawn 1 card so far on this turn, I must immediately draw a second card, so as to come into compliance with the rules as they now stand. However, since I've already played 1 card, my turn is over. So now, on my opponent's turn, they draw 2 cards. Then, if they play a different new rule card that contradicts the one currently on the table, it replaces the current rule card, which goes into the discard pile. Then, since the rule is now draw 3, they too must draw yet 1 more card. 2 quick things before I move on. The first is that if the rules are such that you're required to play more cards than you actually have in your hand, your turn ends as soon as you run out of cards. The second is that the basic rules always stays on the table. Even if they end up being superseded by different draw and play rules, the basic rules come back into force as soon as those draw and play rules are discarded. To eliminate confusion, cover up the part of the basic rules card that the new rule changes. Moving on to the cards with green stripes, called keepers, you play them simply by placing them down in front of you, face up. It's always a good idea to play a keeper, because keepers are what you need to win. At first, there will be no limit to how many keepers you can have in play. However, a keeper limit rule might be played. Keeper limits require you to throw away some of your keepers, but they only apply to you when it's not your turn. Now, so far, we don't have a goal, and until somebody plays a goal, nobody can win. The goals are the pink striped cards, and you play them by placing them in the center of the table. If there's already a goal there, it goes to the discard pile. Goals are made up of a combination of keepers. So here we've got milk and cookies. So if any player had both the milk and cookie keepers in play, they would immediately win the game, even if it wasn't their turn. Right now I have neither, so nothing happens. Most of the goals in Fluxx require that you have a particular pair of keepers, but there are some that will say you need any 2 out of a particular subset, or maybe just any 5. Each goal will tell you exactly what you need right there on the card. Action cards have a blue stripe. When you play one of these, you do whatever it says and then put it on the discard pile. This one, steal a keeper, allows me to take one of the keepers that another player has on the table and put it in front of me. In this example, I have the sun keeper in play, which is half of the current goal, night and day. And my opponent has the other half, the moon card. So if I play my steal a keeper card, I can take that moon card and put it in play in front of me, winning the game! That's one of the things that keeps Fluxx so interesting. You can put together a plan, but you can't really anticipate how the rules are going to change. Fluxx is a tactical game. It's not so much about long-term strategies, but about being flexible and embracing adaptation. Now, each action has its own unique power, but you have to be careful to read the instructions all the way through. For example, some of the actions require you to set your hand aside for the duration of the play. See, it says right there, set your hand aside. Then it tells me to draw 3 cards and play 2 of them and throw the 3rd one away, all of which is counted as a single play. And if any of the cards I played had caused me to draw more cards, those extra cards would go into my set aside hand. Now, let's talk more about new rule cards. New rules take effect immediately, but sometimes they only affect you when it's not your turn. For example, this is a hand limit card, and it limits the number of cards you can hold in your hand. When someone plays this card, everyone else must immediately discard as needed to comply with the limit. Meanwhile, the active player ignores the limit until their turn ends, at which point they too would need to conform to the limit. In the case of hand and keeper limit rules, you get to choose which ones you're keeping and which ones you're throwing away at the end of your turn. Now let's look at one of my favorite new rules, goal mill. The goal mill states that once during your turn, as a free action, which does not count as one of your plays, you may discard any goals you don't want and draw back that many cards to replace them. Some other rules that provide free actions are mystery play, in which once during your turn you may take the top card from the draw pile and play it immediately, and get on with it, which gives you the ability, if you are not empty-handed and you have at least one more play, to discard your entire hand and draw 3 fresh cards. All I've done in this simulated turn are free actions, meaning I still have 2 plays left. However, since I've taken the option to get on with it, those plays are forfeit and my turn ends immediately. If a player forgets to take a free action until after the next player has drawn their first card, it's too late. Now, there are some keepers that have special abilities that you'll find in other versions of Fluxx, but we'll come back to those. That's enough to get you going on the standard basic version of Fluxx. Now, in some of the other versions, you'll also find cards like creepers or surprises, so let me tell you a little bit about those. Creepers made their debut in Zombie Fluxx, and they're basically things you don't want. Usually creepers will prevent you from winning until you can find a way of getting rid of them. However, there are some goals that will require that you have a creeper. When you get a creeper, you must immediately play it. This does not count as a play, and you immediately draw to replace. It's important that you read the text on a creeper card carefully. Not only do they have differing effects, but there are different ways that you can get rid of them. You can't just discard a card you have in front of you without the right resources. Which brings me back to the question of cards with special abilities. In Zombie Fluxx, if I have the Shotgun Keeper in play, I can take 1 free zombie killing action. In Batman Fluxx, Batman, Batgirl, and Robin can all dispose of a villain. And in Star Fluxx, an Engineer Keeper can dispose of a Malfunction Creeper. Of course, getting rid of creepers isn't the only thing that keepers with special abilities can do. For example, in Firefly Fluxx, Zoe can steal Wash because he's her husband, and Wash can steal Serenity because he's the pilot of the ship. Here's another fun type of ability. In Pirate Fluxx, there's a treasure map keeper that can be used to hide booty keepers so they can't be stolen. And speaking of Pirate Fluxx, that's the game where we first introduced another new type of card called the Surprise. Surprises are the only type of card you can play when it's not your turn. And this one, Canceled Plans, is particularly useful when someone else is about to win. The Canceled Plans card undoes a goal card just played by an opponent. So no victory for you! Unless, of course, you have another surprise in your hand, because any surprise can cancel out a surprise, in which case you'd still win. And that's about it. The play continues around the table with each player complying with and frequently changing the rules until someone meets the victory conditions on the current goal, in which case they win immediately, even if it's not their turn. Now, in the unlikely event that two people meet the goal at the same time, the game continues until there is a single winner. And that's how you play Fluxx. Thanks for watching, and thanks for playing my games.